everybody ready to listen?
Yes, we are.
Hello, my name is Gavin Min. I am Chair Tong Pil Min's son who has autism. And yesterday, Tong Pil Min also talked a little bit about the sound and sight sensitivity of autistic children. And I'd like to discuss this much more further today and talk about how does it even affect social interactions. So, what do you think is autism? According to what neurotypical people say, autistic individuals are known to have a lack of social interactions, usually fixated on one thing, and known to repeat certain kinds of behaviors. I have had similar experiences, but all of these, in my case, are tied to picture thinking, which is a different way of thinking when compared to neurotypical people. For example, I get fixated on fish when I have these images of these 3 different species of fish moving around. There are 2 types of images in the brain that I'm going to first talk about. Some think in patterns, and some think similar to movies. Pattern thinkers like Dr. Temple Grandin, who is a Colorado State University professor, tend to think in terms of like folds, such as how many times a paper must be folded in order to get a shape of a praying mantis. However, this is kind of difficult for me to explain because this is Temple's way of thinking, or Dr. Grandin I should say, and I am more of a movie thinker where images appear like scenes of like movies or video games, which can be either cartoon or virtual reality. For example, if it's virtual reality, the fish that you see up here will be actually moving around like you're observing them in an aquarium. There are other ways autistic people think too. And in the case of Dr. Grandin, when she sees the letter S, she picks out the smallest of those letters. However, this is kind of difficult for me to explain to because I'm a movie thinker, as I said. And this is Temple's way of thinking. So I'd like to talk more on the movie thinking, which is the way I think. So as a person who thinks in these type of movie-like images, it is easier to recognize certain kinds of objects. For example, if you talk about fish, especially salmon species, which you will come across if you live in the Pacific Northwest coast, I am able to tell these 2 different species, chum and coho, apart because they have differences in terms of their colors, body shape, teeth size, indentation, eye position, all of the features that define them. And I tend to look at these same fish over and over for like multiple hours or minutes because by doing that, my brain can get a better image of them each time I see them again. However, although it can be easy to recognize certain objects, this creates challenges in languages. For example, when I read a novel, it can be challenging to interpret this one paragraph. And the reason is that I have to collect all the concepts that are contained in that novel, in that paragraph, connect them one by one, and draw an image in my mind. For example, when I was reading this popular novel called Lord of the Flies by William Golding, and when I came across this paragraph, I had to look at what was happening one by one and draw how the characters were interacting with each other in my mind. And then I was able to understand what was actually happening. So it's kind of like reading and interpreting sentences using nuance or hidden meanings. Another challenge with picture thinking is social interactions. There were cases where I made comments on other people's looks, especially girls when they wear bright colors, because I think they're cute and handsome looking, kind of like how like peacocks, how like peahens tend to stare at peacocks with larger and more brighter colored tails. Sometimes I've had cases where I've imitated other people, like my friends, because anytime I listen to them, the word they say exactly remains in my mind, that so as their accent and their tone, that it makes me wanting to repeat what they said again, even when others are near me. This has also happened in high school when I attempted to repeat what my teacher was saying while he was trying to wake up a student who was sleeping. And sometimes even with my friends. In some cases, I don't even consider the situation of other people. And this is especially when I learn about something completely new and fascinating. For example, when I was in high school, I used to talk to my teacher or any of my friends who I knew about space exploration and all the technology to build the different kinds of rockets. And then because of that, I wouldn't care about what tasks they're doing and just continue talking about it continuously, because the image about those were in my mind for like hours, if you imagine. Oh, yeah. So, within autism, earlier we talked about the different kinds of images and how it affects my life in general. This time we're going to go more into the sensitivity parts. And in the sensitivity parts, we're first going to talk about controlled images, uncontrolled images, and then we're going to go into controlled images, which is how I can control my behaviors. So the uncontrolled images can either come from anything I see, hear, touch, smell, or taste, and it draws an image in my mind, and then that causes that emotion or behavior. For example, when I learned about cell division in school, I would laugh when I hear about the part where two cells form and then get cut into half. Like laugh at that part, because I would think about a fun show that I used to watch when I was in elementary. And one time when I saw something on the train tracks, something that's maybe hazardous, I was scared because I thought the train could derail if it runs over that stuff, and that can cause people to die. And if it's especially if it's transporting people or like dangerous chemicals like flammables or sodium hydroxide, anything that can cause harm. So, as I said again, these unexpected images can be triggered either from words, sights, and sounds. Anytime I hear my dad use a device called a fly zapper to electrocute and kill mosquitoes, flies, wasps, hornets, a short spark gets heard, which you should have heard about yesterday. And when that happens, in my mind, a picture of a person getting electrocuted and turned into something crispy gets drawn, that it makes me just run away to prevent being electrocuted. When I was little and when my parents turned off the lights when we were about to go to bed, I used to get really scared because the black background made me think about the deep sea and then think that a deep sea creature, called an anglerfish, which showed up in this movie called Finding Nemo, if you have watched it before, popped into my mind, that it felt like I was about to be eaten alive, making me just run to the area where there is light. I know that kind of sounds crazy. When I get something, anytime I get something, I have something I need, I also had cases where I've repeated words over and over again until I get it, because the mind pictures what I need until I get it. For example, if I were to, let's say, not get hot chocolate, I would say the word hot chocolate over and over again, because in my mind, a picture of the hot chocolate in a cup gets drawn, that it makes me want to just repeat that over and over again until I even get a cup of it. Other than imitation of other people, there have been cases where I've imitated other animals too, because I saw them and heard them make some noise, and then the mind pictures the same animal making the same sound, that it makes me wanting to say what they're saying. For example, I remember watching polar bears fighting with each other and making some noise on YouTube, that the image of those two animals got drawn in my mind, that when I play with the polar bear stuffed animal, I make their sound. Although I don't think any of you understand any animal noises and what they mean. Even though I imitate real animals in some cases, starting from from younger ages, when I would play with stuffed animals, I also would make them talk like humans and do human tasks, like go to different places where we go to, or make them talk like they're friends. And that is because when I take a look at their textures, they make me think about the outfits and the appearances of my human friends, that my mind thinks it's a good idea to make them talk like real humans. Although the first part was kind of like just mixes of just emotions and like just behaviors that happen by myself, and they were kind of like not that as like a what